With over 400 celebrity interviews and tons of pop culture nerdiness, Too Opinionated is a safe haven for your inner geek. Find us at meistercon.com or on YouTube under MeisterCon Pod. And please subscribe. It would really help us out. Thanks, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of Too Opinionated, where today I am joined by Nick Pfeifer. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so we've got, this situation that we have to talk about with Gabby, but before we do that, because it's a complicated situation, and I know everybody wants to hear your side of it. But before we do that, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you're out in LA. What are you doing out there?
Yeah, so I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I lived in Austin for a little bit, did a little bit of live music stuff down there. I'm kind of by trade do production, electronic music production and DJing. So I came out here to pursue that further, worked at some studios, kind of just got my foot in the door, was doing some studio work, realized it wasn't really for me, and just kind of took a step back to focus on my own music. And I'm starting my own project that'll be launching on this Friday. Will be some new music coming out from me.
That's exciting.
Just keep going from there and try to book gigs and just do the thing and just be out in LA, and it's no better place to be. Maybe New York too is very good for that. But just always something going on. And so that's really why I brought myself out here. Just wanted to be in the middle of it, and definitely got exactly what I was looking for. So
yeah, that's terrific. Do you play any instruments?
Yeah, so I grew up playing guitar, play a little bit of piano. And a lot of that just translates to the computer and recording and doing music on the computer now, because at the end of the day, you still have to pop out that piano and lay down some notes, So that's kind of where my strength lies. Is just like here, I'm very good with my ears. I'm not classically trained by any means,
right.
But was able to like figure things out and do what I needed to do to get like good melodies going and good good songs written without necessarily having to know all the notes and read all the sheet music. So I'm very proud of myself just, for that, because it's difficult sometimes, especially without that actual knowledge. But, you've like we were saying earlier, you figure it out. You got to figure it out.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's terrific. What's the genre? What type of music are you putting out there?
Yeah. So it's going to be house music primarily. Just
nice.
good melodies, good bass lines, like perfect for like, dancing at the club.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I enjoy that music, but you won't see me dancing to it. But now my wife, she'd be all about that.
There we go. All right. Yeah. Well, opposites attract. So
that's it. Well, yeah. And she has spent, years trying to help me with my rhythm and my dancing. It has not taken.
Well, we all got our strengths, so
that's it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, mine turned out to be podcasting. So I spent like most of my life with all of this useless knowledge, and trivia answers that were just bouncing around in my head. I was like, what am I going to do with this? Nobody cares about it. But then I found podcasting, and suddenly now it's all put to use.
Exactly. There you go. You never know where it's going to lead you.
So Nick, let's talk a little bit about Gabby Hanna. Tell me a little bit about, who's Gabby and why are we interested in her? Because we are, she's got a huge following. So talk a little bit about, who Gabby is and what she does.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gabby is really like a staple of kind of the original socials that were out there. Like before, there was obviously Vine a while ago, and that ended up closing down. And I think that was her first real foray into socials, and she just blew up. Like she has this really bubbly, like vibrant personality that even shone through. Like Vine was only 6 seconds, but she was able to just say so much in those 6 seconds, because it's not just that she's saying something, but she's acting it out, and she's got these like facial expressions. She's very like emotive and very like, you watch and you laugh, and it's interesting. And so she really built up her following, And then once Vine stopped, transitioned more into YouTube. It was doing more of a long format video.
Yeah.
And then now TikTok, and it's just goes exponential on TikTok. The way that that platform works, it just pushes out the content to everybody. So she ended up amassing like a huge amount of followers there. And throughout that all, she's like a very talented artist, painter, singer, and was kind of releasing her own art and music throughout this whole
Right.
period, kind of using that social as a launch pad. So she's been very successful with that. But in the last few years, she's really been embroiled in a lot of controversy with a lot of other content creators on YouTube. We don't necessarily have to get into that, but it's kind of left her at a point where she's still got this massive fan base of people that support her, but she's just also got a lot of criticism coming from a lot of different angles, and that's kind of hurt her career somewhat. She obviously still has that big platform and everything, but you get a lot of criticism and a lot of people that like are not excited about her anymore because of what they've seen that controversy amount to.
Yeah, I was watching some of those videos because she did have a lot of collaborations with other TikTokers that also have massive followings, and a lot of those have turned a little bit, so where they're
Exactly.
not really being supportive anymore. So what has caused some of that? Because she's pretty open about it, so I think it's okay that we talk some about it. But what has caused some of her fans and you to be concerned? What got you worried about her?
Yeah, so she's been open about her struggles with mental health for the last, few years. I know that about 2 years ago, she was very open with her diagnosis for with ADD, and that was like a big thing that she was talking about. And then recently, within the last year or two, she was very open about her diagnosis with bipolar type 2. And so, from what I understand, she's just been kind of dealing with that, and she's a young woman, and it's there's not often a lot of help and a lot of information, and it's a kind of mental health problem that it affects everybody differently. So there's not like a
Right.
manual that you can follow and say, if you do this, you do that, you're going to be fine. So it's like she's still finding her own way, and I think like that sort of thing has alienated her a little bit because people don't understand, and they don't want to understand, and they are people, especially on the internet, are very quick to judge and say, well, this person did that and I don't want to know anything else about it. They just want to make a judgment about it without really knowing like the struggles that she's been through. So unfortunately, like we've said, it's led to these collaborations that previously were fruitful kind of falling apart. And from what I understand, even she was working on a YouTube short series with a lot of other creators, and they ended up having to kind of kill off her character early because they were just saying she was just a nightmare to work with. And I have no doubt that that's something that's like she's dealing with these, mental health problems, and doesn't really have the guidance or the help that she needs. And unfortunately, it just ends up kind of showing in everything from your online interactions to your in-person interactions. And it's just something that is really unfortunate, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. So the if and you correct me if I've got the date wrong, but August the 24th, you're watching some of her content that's out there, and you become concerned. So what happens at
Yeah,
that point?
so so that's the right date. Basically at that point in time, she has since gone back and deleted a lot of these posts, but there was a 24-hour period where she released about, I want to say, 150 TikToks, and that was just something that people had never seen before, like that
That's a
amount.
lot.
And it's a lot of TikToks to make. And then when you actually went through and saw each one individually, she was doing these telltale signs of kind of like a bipolar episode. There's something called clang, which is when you just do this random word association where you jump from one thing to the next, and it makes sense in your head as you're going through it. But
Right.
as other people watching it, they're like, hey, what the heck is going on? And so everybody on like all these comments coming through, like, somebody help her, this is going, like, something's wrong, like, where's her family, where's her friends? And like we said, these kind of controversies that she's been embroiled in, have left her in a point where people were not reaching out, unfortunately, even though she's going through something so serious. So I've been there before and been with friends that have had that issue happen to them. So I immediately kind of
Right.
recognized it. Then I'm scrolling through and I'm like, man, these are not ending, these TikToks. I can't even get to through all 150 in them. And I'm just seeing it devolve to worse and worse state, to the point where I said, look, if no one's going to go out there, I, was able to see, like, this is an unfortunate thing with a lot of celebrities and public figures, but a lot of times you can just type someone's name and address in, and then it comes up where they live. And if people are not careful about it, that's something that people can use in a bad way. But so I said to myself, like, look, I see where she lives. It's really close by to me. Let me go knock on the door, see if she needs a friend, and see if she needs somebody to talk to. And I understand at that point, the police had already been, the EMS had already been for a wellness check. But the way that those function is that if they ask her, do you want to hurt yourself or hurt anybody? And she says no, they leave. They legally cannot do anything.
Sure.
Yeah. So from what I understand, there'd already been this like level of people calling 911, calling the non-emergency line, trying to get help over there. But just as a fact of the way that our medical system and that our legal system works, they quite literally were not able to do anything. And in fact, that actually ended up being something that hurt her more than it helped her, because she did post this one TikTok about how the LAPD was threatening her to charge her with 911 abuse, because so many people were calling to the point where they were clogging up phone lines, and they'd
Sure.
already kind of established, we can't do anything, stop calling. So there was all these creators online, like there was one specifically that is based out of the UK, and she was encouraging all her followers, call. But at the end of the day, that actually made things worse. So I thought to myself, let me just knock on the door, ring the doorbell, see if she needs somebody to talk to, somebody to help, because obviously nobody's here. So I knocked on the door. She ended up inviting me in, invite me to stay for coffee. She was talking to me about all this stuff, and there's a certain protocol when you're working with people that are going through that. And it's called the LEAP protocol. And it means listen, agree, empathize. And I forget the P right now off the top of my head. I'll probably remember it in a little bit. But an important fact of working with somebody who's going through that is they're not going to respond well if you say, hey, you're crazy, I'm here to help you. They're just not going to respond well. So you listen to what they have to say. You don't challenge what they have to say, because that can evoke a negative response. So I listened to her, I sat with her, I talked with her. And then unfortunately, people in the we were making videos together, and we were having a, overall good time. And then eventually people in the comments started leaving all these nasty comments saying, oh, get that guy out of there, like blah, 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 blah. And she just reacted to it. And that's when there's a video where she says, hey, get the F out. And
Right.
as soon as she requested that I leave, I left, and I, never went back, because at that point, you cannot, if somebody asks you to leave their property, you can't be there. Then that becomes a crime. So yeah, I left when asked, and I never bothered her again, really. And now I've just been facing that backlash of people that, like, maybe disagreed with the way that I did it, or thought it was this, or thought it was that. And I've just been standing my ground saying, hey, I wanted to help. Maybe you don't agree with the way that I wanted to help, but you can, it's still on her profile right now to this day, there's not a family member that has stepped in. There's not another person that has stepped in. And it's really unfortunate that, kind of, because of the internet reaction, she was left at a point thinking that I was not there to help her, because I legitimately was. And it's really sad, because I've had to combat all these lies that people have made up, that I stole something, that I did this, that I did that. And I've had to
Right.
basically debunk all this stuff in real time. And it's just been, crazy dealing with it all. It's been, very stressful, but I basically have stood my ground and said, I'm not going to let the internet bully me, and I'm going to stand up for myself, because I know where my intentions lied, and I know what I, went there for, and I know what I tried to do, and I didn't hurt anybody, and I didn't do anything like that. So I'm not going to let people, tarnish my name or put out negative content about me without me kind of standing my ground.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So let's go through some of this
Yeah.
because there's so much out there. It's it's kind of crazy how
Yeah,
much stuff and how many opinions there are about this situation. So let's start. You had never met her before.
correct.
It's because a lot of what I'm reading when I'm doing research, I'm reading is that the two of you, when you first went to the door, seemed familiar. Like maybe this was set up to make TikTok videos. Is that true?
No, absolutely not true in the
Yes.
slightest. Never had met her before. Just one of those internet rumors. Like, I guess I kind of have a bigger nose, and people like that's something that people have made fun of her for a lot. So people just started saying, "Oh, they look alike. They must be related." And then people
Right.
were saying, "Oh, I've seen him in a video they did before," which I don't know where they're getting that from. But yeah, none of that's true. I had never had any contact with her until that point.
Well, so initially, when you go to the door, you ask to use the restroom. Was that your way of trying to, let's say, break the ice? To kind of to get in a situation where you can listen, kind of assess the situation, as opposed to just knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, I've been watching your TikToks, and I'm a little worried. Are you okay?" What's talk me through that. You know is that the reason that you didn't just go at it directly? Is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I think so honestly, like I was very nervous when I showed up because it is like you said, like we said earlier, it's not something that happens every day. So I was very nervous and I ended up like I guess I'm a nervous peer because I actually did need to use the restroom. So when I knocked on the door, it honestly was just the first thing that popped into my head like and I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can, use the restroom actually, because I actually had to prove to people that I did that. And so I used the restroom. And at that point, that's when she said, "Hey, do you want to stay for coffee?" And then I was like, okay, I'm in, so to say, like, let's talk. Let's have a chat. Let me see what I can talk to her about or like what she needs from me. And I think at that point, she really just needed a friend. And that's why she was so willing, I think, to allow me in and to allow that conversation and why we seem so familiar because she just needed a friend. And I think yeah, like you said, it ended up just being a way to like, I don't know, I'm from the South. That's something that's happened to me before and something I've had to do at neighbors in the neighborhood. Say, hey, I'm 16 years old. We're out here playing on our skateboards down the street. I don't want to pee outside. So I've knocked on doors and had to use people's restrooms before. And it was something that, I felt like, okay, I do need to use the restroom. So it's not a lie. And it's something that will comfortably allow me to enter the house with welcomed in or allowed in without having to kind of sneak in or anything like that. Like so many people saying, "Oh, you broke in or you did this or you did that." It's like, well, no, I did ask to use the restroom and I used the restroom. And from there, she was asking me to stay, quite literally asking me to stay with her, to have coffee, to do all these things. Do you want to listen to music? So yeah, it ended up being a nice segue into conversation with her.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and I would probably be in that group, would, if somebody came to the door and asked to use the restroom, I would probably say no,
Yeah,
because you have that fear of allowing someone in your home that you don't know. But now I do understand where you're coming from, because I grew up, it was different when I was
right.
growing up. You were outside all day long, and anybody in the neighborhood would have let you in at any time for any reason,
Right.
because
We
that's
didn't
just the way
lock
it
our
was.
door. We didn't
Yeah,
lock our door
same.
when I was growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
And
same.
yeah, just to speak on that real quick as well, if it would have been the case that she would have said, "Hey, no," if she would have said no for any reason, that would have been the end of it. I would have walked away.
Would you have at that point switched up and just let her know, "Hey, I'm actually I'm actually worried about you. I saw some of these videos. Are you okay?" Or would you have just walked away?
Yeah, I think I could have kind of tried to come at it from that angle. But again, if she would not have been welcoming or allowed it, I would have said, "All right, hey, that's your right. This is your house. I will leave." because that at the end of the day, if someone's telling you no, you can't come in, that's all that matters, really. So
Yeah. Do you think it upset her when once she kind of figured out that you were actually there to check on her, to check up on her, whatever it was? Because I'm assuming people were posting things off of what you were posting and sending that directly to her. And that, do you think that that upset her that you were there for that reason, as opposed to just being somebody that needed to use the restroom?
yeah, I mean, from what I understand, I do believe that it did upset her a little bit, but I personally believe that the upset, like the reason more so that she got upset was all these things that people were saying about it. If it would have just
Right.
been left at that, like maybe she wouldn't have been as upset. But because all these people in the comments are telling her how to feel almost, and it's a really weird thing when you're getting a lot of comments because you almost lose the ability in that moment to think for yourself. You're
Sure.
reading that comment and that becomes reality. And no matter what your feeling about it was before, if someone's telling you to be mad, you're like, hey, wait, I'm kind of mad. So she did speak on the fact that the wellness checks, the police coming into her house,
Yeah.
all these all these other things also like triggered her in a sense. So from what I understand, what I did was kind of the least of her worries, almost so to say. And it's just these negative narratives that develop around it from people who don't really see the nuance of the situation. And then she's reading that and she's saying, wait, I am mad. Because when we were together in that house, she was not mad. We were having a good
Well, I've
time.
seen
She was,
some of
yeah,
those videos too, and
yeah,
it looked like you were having a good time.
exactly. So I think at the end of the day, it was those comments that really made it tip the edge or whatever, it really
If
made her, yeah. Go ahead.
if you had went there and it had went the exact same way, but you had not recorded anything with that, do you think it would have ended differently? Let's say you went and everything else was the same, but you didn't record anything till you got back home. Do you think that would have went differently, or would it have ended up about the same?
I actually think it would have been worse because the videos ended up being the only evidence, so to say, I had of my side of the story. So
Sure.
all these negative narratives started coming out. And the only reason I've been able to combat some of them is by having this video evidence of what actually happened.
Yeah.
So I know that in the aftermath of it, she was coming out and she was saying all these things like, oh, when he knocked on the door, I sized him up and I did this and I asked him this and I asked him that. But people can go and see my video and say, wait, that's not true.
Yeah.
And I've actually been able to combat this negative narrative. So I actually think it would have been worse if I didn't record.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Is there anything looking back, anything that you would have done differently in how you handled it?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight is 2020 for
That's
sure.
right.
And I think that it's just the one thing that would have gone better, I think, is if she wouldn't have looked at her phone and seen those negative comments, and I could have continued to be a friend for her. And then we could have bonded, had a real, heart to heart, and really like looked into what does she need to do to get better. So I really think I couldn't have done anything differently, especially just because it was such a tenuous situation to the
Sure.
point where like what could I have done differently? Really, I mean, I was, allowed in and then left when requested. Like as far as I can see, really, there's not a lot that I could have done differently that would have changed the outcome.
If you had had the opportunity to continue that conversation with her and offer some advice to help her, what would you have said?
I absolutely would have said, hey, do you have a therapist? Do you have a psychiatrist? Is there some like even a primary care doctor that we can get in touch with that might be familiar with your condition? Do we like, can you go with me voluntarily to an emergency room where they can see you because they're not going to take you involuntarily? I would have explored different options to get medical professionals involved in a way where they couldn't without somebody bringing her or having that level of consent. And if I could have built up that trust with her and built up a friendship, maybe I could have looked at her and said, hey, this is a bad situation. Let's get you somewhere where they can help. But she obviously doesn't want that on her own. So it's almost something that she needs to have coming from somebody that she trusts, and or at least has some level of bond with. So yeah, if we could have continued without these people making a big deal about it, then I think we could have got her more help on, and it's really unfortunate that it had to go down like that.
How has she seemed on social media since then? I mean, I know there was a lot of the back and forth stuff, but just as far as her mental health state, how has she seemed since then?
She definitely seems to have calmed down a lot. She's not frantically posting. She's had some kind of outlandish claims, and I know that she's very religious, and there's obviously nothing wrong with that, but she's making, some kind of outlandish claims about religion and things of that nature. But I have seen that tone down in the last few weeks. So I think that is a positive, moving in the right direction. So
Right. Right. Yeah, I think social media is it's so interesting, and we're all kind of learning together of the goods and the bads of about social media. When it first came out with MySpace and Facebook, it was a way you could just connect with people you hadn't seen in a while,
right,
or maybe to share photos.
right,
But it's evolved over time. So now you're in a situation where you're so involved in people's lives. Everybody shares everything, good
right,
and bad.
right.
It can be either one with that. So looking at this situation and the fact that one of the downsides of social media, I think, is that people make snap judgments. You, there's no it doesn't matter necessarily who's right or wrong. It's they're people are going to make their own mind up instantly and
Yep,
just go with that,
yep.
which I think that's a whole nother issue. But looking back at it, what have you learned about how to interact with social media? Is there any experiences that you've taken from this that'll help you going forward?
Absolutely. I think a lot of it is, you have to remember that people are, like you said, making these snap judgments. They're leaving a nasty comment in a second and then moving on with their day. They're not really invested in it. And you cannot take a lot of these things to heart. And you have to know in yourself, your true self, like, look, what this person is saying about me is not true. And maybe you put out something that, goes against it, or maybe you just ignore it. But you have to just keep pushing forward and keep putting out positive things, and just try to do you at the end of the day, because there's always going to be somebody out there who's saying something mean or making some judgment. But you have to
Right.
recognize that most of the time people that are, it's like that old saying, like, hurt people hurt people. So it's like
Yeah.
people that are going out here and making nasty comments, like, I don't know what they're going through. Maybe somebody's hurt them, maybe they're taking out their anger from somewhere else. So you have to give people the benefit of the doubt, but you also have to protect yourself and not let those things affect you, even when they become really personal or they get really overwhelming. And I've really had to deal with that in the last few weeks, where there's all these people saying all these things, and people will say, well, you're deleting comments. Oh, you're not letting people. It's like, I don't owe anybody anything. They don't have a right to comment on
Right.
my post. If I want to delete it because I don't like it, I think it's nasty, that's completely my right. And
That's right.
people expend a lot of energy leaving these paragraph long. And at the end of the day, I just want to look at it and say, like, what's going on in your life that you have to go online and push this hate onto other people? And it's a lot of mental health. It's a lot of, like we said, just this like over obsession, like everything's on social media. But at the end of the day, you just have to keep doing you and not let these, if there are negative comments, not let it affect you, because all you can do is live your life and put yourself out there. And anybody who puts himself out there is always going to get some level of negative response. So unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. Um, have you received any positive responses?
Oh, totally. Tons and tons and tons of positive responses. people messaging me, leaving TikTok, messaging me on Instagram. Like I had one person that was telling me a story about their brother who's in the hospital and dealing with this, and they said, you doing this has given me like the strength to feel like I can put myself out there. Or people saying, hey, I struggle with bipolar and I wish someone would have been there because nobody was. Or somebody reaching out and just like registered nurses commenting on my stuff saying, hey, people might not like it, but like sometimes you have to help people, and sometimes a stranger has to step in. I've had tons and tons of positive responses, and it's nice to see in between all the negative comments, like, hey, some people get it and some people see me as a human. Because at the end of the day, if you see someone else as a human, you're probably not going to leave that nasty comment. You're going to take a step back and
That's
take
right.
a breath and say, hey, that's a person. I'm a person. We shouldn't treat people like that, period. No matter how much I dislike what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's actually a really good statement. Whatever your opinion is, it should not affect how you treat somebody as a person. Absolutely 100% agree with that.
Yeah. And everybody's entitled to their opinion, obviously, but you have to draw the line somewhere where it's like, there's a great quote about hate. Hate is like a hot stone, and you hold it in your hand and you try to give it to somebody else. But at the end of the day, you hold on to that and it's gonna burn you. It's gonna hurt you.
Yeah.
It's not healthy to be hateful. It's just not, period.
Yeah. No, it really isn't. That negative energy will just eat you up if you allow it. So has
Exactly.
this situation, has it turned you off to putting yourself out there in the future? If you run into something where somebody needs help in the future, are you going to hesitate or will you step in?
Absolutely not. I'll always step in to help a stranger in need. One of my great friends in Texas has, had done a similar thing, and it's interesting how it can pan out in a completely different way. He pulled someone out of a burning car. He wasn't a firefighter. Nobody asked him to help, but he pulled someone out of a burning car and he saved that person's life. And he got
Yeah.
a lot of good positive response for it, because that's an amazing thing to do. And at the end of the day, if you see someone struggling on the street, passed out, like you don't have to step in, but if you feel like you can do something, then you should try. You should always try, because at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we should be helping our fellow humans. And I think if everybody took that mentality of like, hey, I would want someone to help me in my time of need, in my struggles, then you're going to look at things differently and you're going to say, maybe I can help somebody. And you don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a firefighter. Normal people help normal people every day. And as long as you protect yourself, I know there's cases of somebody stopping to help someone on the side of the road, and then they
Yeah.
get assaulted or whatever. And it's like, you shouldn't get yourself into a dangerous situation like that. But personally, living in downtown LA, I bring my pepper spray everywhere. So it's like you have to take steps to protect yourself. And if you don't feel safe in a situation, then you're not obligated to help anybody. But if you feel safe and you feel like you can do something, then you should at least try, as long as you're protecting yourself.
If Gabby reached out to you, would you be open to that conversation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I think everybody, no matter what has gone on, no matter what has happened, I think everybody deserves a chance, and I think everybody deserves help. And if she reached out, I would be more than willing to speak with her and just kind of obviously like give my side and give my perspective and maybe apologize for the way it went down. Because I don't write anybody off. I always am willing to hear somebody
Right.
out.
Yeah, very good, very good. Has this had a overall negative or positive effect as far as your own social media?
I would say it's definitely a mixture of both, but right now it's still leaning towards the negative. There's still a lot of people putting out, lies and false statements. But I'm working on it. I'm just trying to talk to people, because I find that when people talk directly to me, it's harder for them to make these snap judgments, and it's harder for them to have some hateful opinion, because I feel like I'm a decently nice guy, and I don't name call people, even when they've gone and made a YouTube video calling me all sorts of names. I reach out and I say, hey man, this happened recently with a big YouTuber. He was making this video saying all this, sorts of stuff. My first response was not, hey, you this and that. I reached out, I said, hey man, I feel like if you would just talk to me, maybe I could explain things, maybe you could see my side of the story a little bit. Period. That's it. Because I'm trying to turn this negativity around, and I do feel like the facts stand on my side. And I think that once more and more, I've had a lot of people come around on my TikTok to the point, like somebody just left me a comment today. Hey, I'm really sorry for all the nasty comments I left. Like I've seen how it developed over the last few weeks, and I feel bad. And I think a lot of people that ended up leaving negative comments in the beginning will come around if they're really engaging in an intellectually honest way and really looking to see the truth instead of just make a judgment. I really think people are going to come around, and it's going to overall be positive at the end of the day.
At what point do you move past it? At what point do you say, okay, I've answered enough, and now I'm going to go back to putting, my regular content out there or my music out there? When do you get to that point?
I think we're getting there. We're getting there right about now. The last few, like it was like at one point it was every day, 2-3 YouTubers making videos about it. And now it's kind of trickled out to where it's like, okay, there's 1 or 2 in the last week, and this one didn't even really mention me except for a second. There's one YouTuber that I had to deal with recently, but it seems like I've got that handled. I spoke with him personally and kind of dealt with it in my own way. I did have to send him a little like legal letter saying, hey, if you keep saying things that are untrue about me, it might be a bigger problem for you. I don't want to reveal anything too crazy, but it's like it's gotten to the point where it's trickled out so much, and especially the internet has a really short attention span. People are losing interest, so to say. So I feel like, yeah, I have all my videos up on my page explaining my side. I'm talking to people. So yeah, I think it's, within the next couple of weeks, I hopefully will never have to talk about it ever again, except to say, hey, I already talked about that. You can see here what it was. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, Nick, I really appreciate you coming on and kind of giving your side of the story, which is ideally what we would do. You would ask for both sides of the stories before you make a judgment about it, but that doesn't always take place. So I really appreciate you taking the time. Couple little things though before we wrap up.
Yeah.
What do you have coming next? I know you're working on some music. What's next for Nick? What do you have that we can kind of keep an eye on?
Yeah, so on all my social channels, I'm going to be sharing mental health resources and information about that I feel comfortable with sharing about myself and just in general. I have some content on there that's just kind of talking about the healthcare system in America and how things operate and how things could be better. So in addition to doing my music, and that's kind of where I've always been, now I have this angle to kind of talk about mental health and try to get people to understand things like bipolar that a lot of people don't understand, and just give my perspective. I have a family history of dealing with bipolar. So it's just like I want to put myself out there and try to be an advocate for mental health and try to help people whenever I can. And I've always told people throughout all this, like, if you need a friend, reach out to me, send me a message. I will respond if I see it. Like, I absolutely love talking to people and love just giving, what advice that I can or feel comfortable. I don't like telling people you have to do this, you have to do that, but I do like helping people to see maybe a different perspective. And maybe, sometimes people just need somebody to open up to. They don't have somebody. And I love to be that person for somebody and just try to help in whatever way that I can and put resources out there that can help somebody potentially.
Yeah, I do love that's a positive that has come from this situation. Is it has given you incentive to be an advocate for mental health issues, and I think that's terrific. Anytime we can open up that dialogue, and start dispelling some of the myths and some of the negative stereotypes with that. That's a positive. So I think at least that has come out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times it's an uncomfortable conversation, but it's just one of those conversations that we want to have if we want to get better as a society and as a humankind. Like it's something that we have to talk about and have to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, okay. So last thing, Nick, before we wrap up, where can we find you on social media? Where can we find your music on social media?
Yeah, so my TikTok page is p.ui_. My Instagram is the same, but 2 extra underscores at the end because it wasn't available. And then my music will be coming out on Spotify, and I'll be sharing the links on all my socials as well because it's the first release under this name. So the Spotify page doesn't even exist yet, but it will on Friday. And if people stay tuned, I'll be putting that out there.
It's exciting. Yeah, it's very good. So congratulations on the music stuff, because that's not easy putting yourself out there that way. So that's awesome. Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely appreciate that.
Well, Nick, thank you again for the time. I know it's not always easy, when you're having to answer questions about something that you did, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and I definitely appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, hold on one second, Nick. All right, so that was Nick Pfeifer. If you're on social media, especially TikTok, I'm sure you have seen the situation that occurred between Gabby Hanna and Nick Pfeifer. And I'm not here to tell you who's right and who's wrong. I'll leave that to your own devices. You can decide for yourself. I thought Nick did a good job explaining his side of it, which was the purpose of bringing him on the show, to give him that platform. And I thought he did a pretty good job of that. And I will say that I took him on this interview as being genuine. That's my opinion. But the situation is very complicated. Could he have handled it better? Maybe. Was there an argument to be made that he should have just stayed out of it? I think there was. But if you're someone who is motivated to help, then perhaps you respond in a similar fashion. I'll leave that up to you guys, but I thought it was such a unique situation. Maybe not that unique. Unfortunately, with social media, these type of things are going to keep happening because we put so much out there as a society, of things that in the past maybe we would have kept to ourselves. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's probably both. Probably both. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. It's different from our usual content. I debated a little bit about whether or not we wanted to put this on our platform, and decided that it was interesting enough and unique enough that we would do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it gave you some insight as to Nick's state of mind when he was dealing with this. And I hope that you will give Nick a chance going forward, whether you agree with this situation or not. I hope you'll give him a chance going forward, and that you'll check out his music, which sounds like it's coming out pretty soon. So I wish him all the best with that. If you're joining us for the first time, you can help us out. We're trying to grow our YouTube channel. Same as everybody else. We're trying to grow our social media presence. Specifically, right now, we're working on our YouTube channel. If you could subscribe, it's free. That's all we ask. And we only ask that if you enjoy what we're putting out there. If you're new to us, We are closing in on 500 episodes, which is almost unheard of as far as podcasting goes. We've been doing this for a little less than 4 years. The majority of our episodes are with people out of the entertainment industry, actors, managers, musicians, authors. You can find all that. I guarantee you'll find somebody that you're a fan of or that you like, or you'll discover somebody that you want to know more about. So please give us a chance. YouTube MeisterCon Pod. Please check that out. You can also find all 500 episodes and counting on our website, meistercon.com. It'll tell you all about us. It'll let you know if we're doing anything in studio, if we're going on location, if we're covering a convention. And it even has a fun, geeky, well-written blog that Brett does that I think you'll enjoy. When it gets right down to it, we're a father and son team in a small town in West Virginia. We never would have imagined that we would have the following that we have, or that we would be able to do 500 episodes. So we're so grateful for that. We definitely don't take you guys for granted, and I hope that you are enjoying. If you're a returning watcher or listener, thank you. If you're new to us, thank you as well. And I hope that you've enjoyed it enough that you'll continue to support us going forward. Thank you guys so much. Until next time. Bye, everybody.